Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to my videos. Um, Hold on one moment. Okay. I First off, I must greatly apologize for my absence. I intended to come back to doing videos earlier than now, but I got sidetracked. One of which was me getting sick. Uh, and I was actually pretty fucked up for a while. I ended up having a fever of 106 at the height of my sick. It went down for a little bit, but then it re-peaked back up on 103. So obviously I was in no shape to do any videos. And honestly, doing videos was the last thing on my mind at that point. I was so weak and I was so fucked up. I could barely move. And I was honestly just kind of in a kind of a half coma for a little bit of that. And when I got better, I said I wanted to wait until I was completely recovered to start coming back to doing videos. And I've actually been completely recovered for a little while. So I guess, well, partially, my girlfriend also got sick, so I had to take care of her. She caught a little bit of what I had. I've been busy with work, just in general. I just got sidetracked from doing YouTube videos. But I'm in the spirit of doing videos again now, so I'm going to be coming back full force. And what better way to come back full force than do a double feature episode? And yes, you read the title right. Today I will be reviewing Pacific Rim 2013 and Pacific Rim Uprising 2018. Starting, of course, with the first one. So, Pacific Rim is a very interesting film for a number of reasons. One is its place in the kaiju fan base. Pacific Rim is a 2013 American science fiction monster movie directed by the legendary Guillermo del Toro. Now, Guillermo del Toro, in my opinion, is one of the most underappreciated directors in all of Hollywood. It only took until fucking 2017 with The Shape of Water for the man to win some kind of Academy Award. He did Kronos. He did Mimic. He did Hellboy. And Hellboy, well, I don't know if he directed Hellboy 2. He did Pacific Rim. He did Crimson Peak. He's done, hello, Stephen McKinney. He's done so many fantastic movies. Pan's Labyrinth. He's done so many fantastic, fantastic movies. And it only took until The fucking Shape of Water for this man to finally win some kind of Academy Award. And Guillermo del Toro is one of those directors that has put out, at least in my opinion, the only movies that I don't really care for that Guillermo has done is Pan's Labyrinth and Crimson Peak. But aside from those, Guillermo del Toro has done very little bad stuff, in my opinion. Like Cujo. No, not really. I don't really like Cujo. Either the book nor the movie. That's neither here nor there. So, and also Guillermo del Toro, I feel, is one of the last true passion project directors out there. Because I'm not talking about Cujo on this stream right now. But I also feel that he's one of the true last passion project directors out there. And I think it's a shame because not to say that directors nowadays aren't passionate about their jobs. I just think Guillermo del Toro is one of the few directors alive nowadays who still really has the option to, not really option, but has the desire to make the movies that he truly wants, and not just kind of directors who kind of want to do what they want to do, but they're doing it within the guidelines of producers and studios nowadays. Guillermo del Toro, I feel, doesn't really have those constraints. Like with The Shape of Water, I don't think that movie. Yes, I know the Asylum ripped off Pacific Rim with the Atlantic Rim movies, and I've heard those are terrible. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, with The Shape of Water. That I don't think that movie could have been made a couple of years ago, but it had a $15 million budget and it made almost $400 million. Kind of goes to show. Kind of goes to show that the right director can slap a studio in the face with a small budget and make a big profit, and also still make a good movie out of it. A Pacific Rim anime. I'd be down for that. But with Pacific Rim, a lot of Guillermo del Toro's movies are loving homages to certain genres that he loves. Like with Kronos, from what I've heard, I've only seen bits and pieces of Kronos. It was just a big homage to vampire films. Netflix anime. Again, I'd still be down for that. Yeah, with Kronos, it was a big homage to vampire films. With Mimic, it's an homage to giant bug horror movies. With Hellboy, I don't really think Hellboy is an homage, but it's a passion project adaptation of a comic that he is a big fan of, at least from what I've heard. And with Pacific Rim, of course, it's considered to be a homage to the kaiju, mecha, and anime genres that, of course, Guillermo del Toro is also a very big fan of, especially with the kaiju films. Unfortunately, here's another thing about this movie that I find very interesting. Despite Guillermo del Toro really putting in a lot of time and effort into this movie, and I truly admire all the time and effort he put in this movie. It's clear as day on screen. Despite Guillermo del Toro truly giving it his all with this film, unfortunately, with a budget of $190 million, Pacific Rim actually underperformed at the box office, making only $411 million in the U.S. Hi, wife. But yes, as Justin just said, outside of the U.S., Pacific Rim was very successful in China and also probably in Japan too. But overseas, it was a very big hit. But unfortunately, the film did underperform in the U.S. I guess just because people don't really don't know what quality movies are nowadays. But that's just my opinion. Like people will say Pacific Rim 2 is a bad movie. But more on that later. And also, it's interesting for me because when I first heard about this movie, I really wasn't all that interested. I saw the trailer, and it really didn't do much for me. So I actually skipped seeing this movie in theaters, and I waited to quite a while. I think it was almost 24. Actually, no, it was 2014 when I finally got my hands on the Pacific Rim DVD, which is the original DVD that I bought. And what really got me interested was a couple friends of mine at the time saying Pacific Rim was awesome, Pacific Rim this, Pacific Rim that. So I finally got interested, and I picked up Pacific Rim, and I watched it on my 13 by 13 inch TV at my dad's place one rainy afternoon. And man, was I not disappointed. And I still to this day kick myself in the ass for not seeing Pacific Rim in theaters. I would have loved the shit out of this movie if I saw it in theaters. Pacific Rim, in my opinion, is one of... See, I don't know. I think it might... I don't know. Because Guillermo del Toro is just a really good director. It's either my favorite or my second favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. Because I don't know, the first Hellboy is pretty fucking awesome too, and then there is The Shape of Water, which, though actually I have to be in a certain mood to watch The Shape of Water. Not to say that's a bad movie, because The Shape of Water is a fantastic film, but again, I have to be in a certain mood to watch that. And I could watch Hellboy and Pacific Rim anytime. I'd actually probably have to say, that's two. Pacific. Okay, yeah. So Pacific Rim, I probably have to say is my second favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. No, I will not review Sharknado. Not gonna happen. So with all that being said, my personal history with that out of the way, let's get into the plot of. Actually, wait, no. Let me talk about Pacific Rim 2, because, like I said, it's gonna be a double feature. So with I noticed at the ending of Pacific Rim, I was one of those people who was kind of saying, "Nah, Pacific Rim doesn't really need a sequel." Um, but it wasn't until afterwards I got into the Star Wars universe and I got into other franchises when I realized that there is a lot of room for a sequel for Pacific Rim. I was still kind of one of those people saying it works well as a standalone movie right off the bat in and of itself. But as time went on, I grew to say, yeah, I think there should be at least one sequel. And sure enough, in 2018, we got one. Pacific Rim Uprising. Oh boy. I was excited for Pacific Rim 2 when I first I was excited for Pacific Rim 2 when it was first announced. But I once again did not see it in theaters. For I don't really know why. I guess, well, actually no, I do know why. It's because the hype, well, not really the hype. I remember a lot of the hype that surrounded the movie, and everyone was seemed to be really excited for the film. But then when it came out, I saw the really nasty negative reaction that a lot of people had toward the film. So that kind of scared me away for a little bit. It's kind of a similar case with the anime Godzilla movies, which those reviews are coming a little later than I expected because I just realized I need to review 2 trilogies before I do so. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, unlike with Pacific Rim 1, right when the first movie came out, I picked the disc up and I watched it a couple days afterwards. Now, some reviews that I saw for the movie were, like I said, they were so negative and they were so nasty. One person said they thought it was so bad that they're planning on commissioning a petition to Universal to remake the film, kind of like with The Last Jedi, though. In Last Jedi's case, it's deserved. And so that kind of scared me away, and it almost made me lose faith in the kaiju fan base. And around this time was when some photos of Godzilla King of the Monsters were released, and one of which was Godzilla raising his head and firing his atomic breath into the air. And one of the first things that people were saying is, look how fat he is. And that kind of scared me away and made me almost lose faith in the kaiju fan base once again. But I watched Pacific Rim 2, and I wasn't disappointed. But I also, at the same time, slightly was also disappointed. Because as a sequel, I do think the film works. Let me ask these questions, and I will answer these at the end of the review. Does the film live up to the hype? And was it worth the 5-year wait? Because I know, that. Fuck. Goddamn fucking chat keeps distracting me. I know that some people were saying that this movie was not worth the 5-year wait, and I also know that Guillermo del Toro and company went through a lot of trials and tribulation to actually get a sequel to Pacific Rim made. And I was kind of following that along myself, and when it was finally announced that there was a sequel being made, that kind of restored my faith in the movie business a little bit. But then when I saw the movie, it was just kind of not really dissipated, but I was, but I also was not disappointed with Pacific Rim 2. But let's get into the plots of Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim 2, shall we? And I will continue to. I am aware that, yes, it's called Pacific Rim Uprising. I'm just going to call it Pacific Rim 2 just for simplicity's sake. But I will answer those questions when I get to the end, near the end of the review. So in 2013, an interdimensional portal known as the Breach opens at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, hence the name Pacific Rim, from which giant monsters called kaiju emerge. To combat the kaiju threat, humanity, like all of humanity, just puts aside their differences, and finally we get world peace and world unification. They pool all their resources together to build massive robotic machines, aka humanoid mechas, called Jaegers. Jaeger being German for the word hunter. Each Jaeger is piloted by 2 or sometimes 3 human pilots whom are mentally linked in a process called drifting to share the mental stress of piloting machine. It's explained in the prologue of the film that they tried using only one person to pilot a Jaeger, but the mental stress of piloting such a large machine was too much that they ended up having brain aneurysms or something along those lines. So 2 people and also sometimes 3 people, which I think having 3 people pilot a Jaeger is, I think, a better option. But having 2 people share the mental load was a lot less strenuous on the human brain. So in the year 2020, 7 years into the Kaiju War, the 2 Beckett brothers, Raleigh and Yancey, Raleigh being played by Charlie Hunnam of what was it called? Sons of Anarchy fame, which I think is his magnum opus. Raleigh and Nancy are pilots of the mech Gypsy Danger. Oh man, I love this guy. They are launched to defend Anchorage from Knifehead, a Category 3 kaiju. Category 3 being terms of size for kaiju. There's Category 1 leading up to Category 5. Defying direct orders from command, they engage the monster directly rather than protect the coastline. Knifehead then proceeds to kill Yancey in a short fight, and Raleigh barely manages to pilot the Jaeger on his own, killing the kaiju before crashing Pacific Rim at the Anchorage shoreline. Traumatized by Yancey's death, Raleigh quits the Jaeger program indefinitely. Well, not really definitely, but 5 years later, in 2025, the increasing power and number of kaiju attacks caused the world governments to cease funding the continuous construction of Jaegers in favor of building coastal walls. I feel like that's a bit of an homage to Attack on Titan, but that's just me. And Marshall Stacker Pentecost, played by Idris Elba. Oh boy. Moves all 4 remaining Jaegers to the last Jaeger Shatterdome in Hong Kong and plans to end the kaiju war by destroying the breach with a nuclear bomb, which I think is kind of a bad idea, but whatever. As Striker Eureka, piloted by Herc Hansen and his son Chuck, kills Mutavor, whom is a Category 4 kaiju in Sydney, demonstrating the ineffectiveness of the walls as the monster just completely plows through the wall with seemingly no effort. Pentecost persuades Raleigh to rejoin the program, and they arrive at Hong Kong and meet Mako Mori, director of the Jaeger Restoration Program and also the adopted daughter of, what's his name? Pentecost, yeah. After finding her compatible, Raleigh and Mako try their first drift. However, Mako ends up nearly destroying the Shatterdome while lost in the memory of a Category 2 kaiju attacking Tokyo, an obvious nod to Godzilla, and killing her family, and is relieved of piloting duty. It is revealed after this incident that Mako was saved and raised by Pentecost, becoming his adopted daughter. Pentecost consults kaiju experts Newton Geisler and Herman Gottlieb to plan the assault on the breach. Newton is actually able to successfully drift with a piece of a kaiju brain, and discovering the kaiju are scouts sent by invading beings from another dimension and establishing a 2-way mental link that enables the kaiju hive mind to gain access to his knowledge just as he did, just as he did theirs. Pentecost tasks Newton with finding a black market dealer and seller of kaiju body parts, Hannibal Chow, played by the awesome Ron Perlman, to find a fresh kaiju brain. However, two Category 4 kaijus, Leatherback and Otachi, emerge and rampage through Hong Kong to kill Newton. After Otachi destroys Crimson Typhoon, which is a 3-armed, 3-piloted Jaeger, and Leatherback destroys Cherno Alpha, a Russian prototype almost Jaeger, Striker Eureka loses all power by Leatherback's attack, which is an EMP blast. Gypsy Danger is finally sent in because Gypsy Danger is nuclear powered. As they put it, Cherno Alpha and Striker Eureka and such, they're all digital. However, Gypsy Danger is analog, meaning the EMP blasts have absolutely no effect on him. So Gypsy Danger is set in one of the probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, slays both monsters. Newton and Chow find out that Otachi is pregnant, and the infant kaiju dies shortly after swallowing Chow whole, being strangled by its own umbilical cord. Newton and Herman drift with the infant's brain, and discovering the breach will only open in the presence of a kaiju DNA. Or, the breach will only open in the presence of a kaiju's DNA. Hang on one second. Sorry, the wife is messaging me. They do not. You fucking punk ass. Anyway, as Hercules was injured during the previous fight, Pentecost, who was actually dying from radiation sickness from piloting a Jaeger with a nuclear core before the implementation of radiation shielding, since the first Jaeger prototypes were just scraped together in 14 months, which for something that large and that complex, I do imagine that is a very short amount of time. Excuse me. He gives a rallying speech and pilots Striker Eureka with Chuck. Along with Gypsy Danger, they approach the breach at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and are warned by Newton and Herman of what they discovered from drifting with the infant kaiju's brain. 3 kaiju named Raiju, Scunner, and Slattern emerge from the breach to defend it. After Raiju is bisected by Gypsy Danger, which is one of the best kills of the movie, Slattern and Scunner damage Striker Eureka, rendering it unable to drop the bomb inside the breach. Pentecost and Chuck sacrifice themselves by detonating the bomb in a last-ditch attempt to kill Scunner and Slattern. As Raleigh and Mako use one of Raiju's halves to enter the breach, they encounter a heavily wounded Slattern. Slattern being the only Category 5 kaiju in this film. It's actually one of my problems with this film that I will get to momentarily. Slattern revealed to have survived the explosion. Gypsy Danger kills Slattern and uses its corpse instead to enter the breach, where they encounter the precursors, the creators of the kaiju. Mako is ejected, and Raleigh successfully overloads the Jaeger's reactor, creating a nuclear explosion that closes the breach and kills the precursors in the process. As Raleigh and Mako's escape pod surfaces in the Pacific Ocean, Hercules, who is now in charge of the Jaeger program, orders the war clock to be stopped, indicating mankind's victory. Raleigh and Mako embrace as helicopters arrive to rescue them, excuse me. In a mid-credit scene, Hannibal Chow is shown cutting his way out of the kaiju infant, ending the film with, "Where is my goddamn shoe?" Him having a slight lisp because he has a fucking grill. So how about this story? In short terms, it's awesome. It's very original, very well thought out, very well planned. There's not enough good things that I can say about the story to Pacific Rim. I think it's one of the best monster movie stories. No, I have not seen The Edge, and no, I am not interested in seeing The Edge. Sorry. Um, yes, I will say it's a better American adaptation of the kaiju genre than 1998 Godzilla. As much as I love Godzilla 1998, I will agree that this movie is leaps and bounds better than. I mean, ignoring the fact that Godzilla 1998 is a bad Godzilla adaptation, its story is just very much so not very original because it essentially is a unofficial remake of The Beast in 20,000 Fathoms. And that movie doesn't have a very original plot. It's actually a very basic atomic movie monster. No, I do not have to watch The Edge, Stephen. I don't care. I like what I like. Yeah, that Beast 20,000 Fathoms is a very typical atomic monster movie plot. This movie is not typical whatsoever. I feel like it's very original. It's very well thought out, very well created. Overall, the story to Pacific Rim is fan-fucking-tastic. It's one of the best things that you can say about this movie. And it's very obvious that Guillermo del Toro went through a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot, and I mean a lot of just effort to make this as original as possible. And so props, major props to Guillermo del Toro. So let's move on to the plots of Pacific Rim Uprising, shall we? In 2035, 10 years after the Battle of the Breach, in which the interdimensional portal created by the precursors through which they sent the marauding kaiju was closed, former Jaeger pilot Jake Pentecost, son of Battle of the Breach hero Stacker Pentecost, makes a living by stealing and selling Jaeger parts on the black market in the LA area. After he tracks parts of a disabled Jaeger's power core to the secret workshop of a 15-year-old Jaeger enthusiast, Amara Namani, both are arrested by the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps, PPDC, after an altercation between Amara's small single-pilot Jaeger Scrapper and the police Jaeger November Ajax. A holographic transmission of Jake's adopted sister, General Mako Mori, who is also a PPDC Secretary General, persuades him to return to PPDC as an instructor with Amara as a recruit. Arriving at the China Shatterdome, Jake starts training Jaeger's program cadets with his estranged former co-pilot Nate Lambert, whom I believe is played by Scott Eastwood, who I think is one of the sons of Clint Eastwood. Yes, he is. Okay. He is the fifth of Clint Eastwood's 8 children. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Damn. How many times has Clint Eastwood been married? Oh, only twice. Wait, no. Been married twice, but he's been with 4 women in total. Damn, dude, really? Anyway, so back to Pacific Rim 2. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Nate and Mako reveal to him that the Jaeger program is being threatened by the Shao Corporation's new drone program, which offers to mass-produce Jaeger drones developed by Xiao Liwen and Dr. Newt Geisler, reprising his role from the previous film. The Scrapper kind of remind you of a Transformer? No, not really. And Amara, or how? Yes, I'm aware that Xiao is played by the chick from Kong Skull Island, and also her assistant is played by one of the villains from Ip Man 3. See, what's his name? Max Zhang. Yeah, that's his name. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, yeah. Mako is due to deliver a final assessment to determine the approval of the drones at a PPDC council meeting in Sydney. However, she is killed by a rogue Jaeger Obsidian Fury before she can report. And her death prompts the PPDC council to immediately authorize and deploy the drones. However, moments before her death, Mako had transmitted the location of a defunct Jaeger production facility in Siberia. Jake and Nate travel there in Gypsy Avenger, essentially the updated version of Gypsy Danger. However, Obsidian Fury destroys the complex and engages Gypsy Avenger in battle. And upon destroying its reactor after a short fight, they find that Obsidian Fury was piloted by a kaiju's secondary brain, which testing shows was grown on Earth. When the drones reach their respective locations, their piloting operations are taken over by cloned kaiju brains that were secretly mounted on board. The kaiju Jaeger hybrids simultaneously attack all Pacific Rim Shatterdomes, and they inflict heavy casualties on PPDC forces, and they also end up incapacitating almost all Jaegers. Herman Gottlieb, also once again returning from the first film, and Newt try to disable the drones. However, Herman discovers that Newt is behind the attack when he commands the Kaiju Jaeger hybrids to open multiple breaches across the Pacific Rim. For those of you who don't know, the Pacific Rim is also known as the Ring of Fire, in which throughout the world there is a ring of volcanoes throughout the planet. And when you spread out the continents of the planet on a map, it forms a circular, well, not really a circular shape, but they're all somewhat in a circular pattern, and thus is dubbed the Ring of Fire. Let's see, where was I? Newt's mind has been taken over by the precursors who forged a link when he originally drifted with a kaiju brain in the first film. Although Shao is able to destroy the drones and ends up closing all the breaches, 3 kaiju had already emerged, 2 Category 4s and a Category 5, and have reached Tokyo, of course. Why is it always Tokyo? The team realizes that the precursor's true goal is to activate the Ring of Fire, which is a major area. Okay, here's a better explanation of the Ring of Fire. Is a major area in the basin of the Pacific Ocean where many earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur. In a large 40,000 kilometer horseshoe shape, it is associated with a nearly continuous series of oceanic trenches, volcanic arcs, and volcanic belts. Thus, once again, like I said, being called the Ring of Fire. By detonating Mount Fuji with the kaiju's blood, spreading toxic gas into the atmosphere, essentially terraforming the planet for the precursors and wiping out all life on Earth for precursor colonization. The cadets are mobilized while Gottlieb and Shao repair the PPDC's 4 salvageable Jaegers. Jake and Nate's Jaeger Gypsy Avenger is joined by Guardian Bravo, piloted by cadets Suresh and Ilya, Saber Athena, whom I'm pretty sure is stated to be the most agile Jaeger out there, cadets Renata, piloted by cadets Renata and Ryoichi, and the 3-pilot Bracer Phoenix, piloted by cadets Amira, Victoria, and Jinai. Gottlieb develops kaiju blood-powered rockets, which launch the team to Tokyo. Although the Jaegers initially repel the 3 kaiju, Newt merges them into a gigantic mega kaiju using robotic parasites from one of Shao's factories. And it's never really given a name aside from just the mega kaiju. The mega kaiju quickly overpowers the Jaegers, injures Nate and Ilya, kills Suresh, Renata, and Ryoichi, and destroys 3 of the 4 Jaegers, leaving Gypsy Avenger as the only operating Jaeger. Jake and Amara pilot it against the mega kaiju, with Shao remote piloting Scrapper and aiding them in locating a rocket and welding it onto Gypsy Avenger, which sends the Jaeger, with Scrapper holding on, into the atmosphere and free falling back to Earth colliding with the mega kaiju as it's just about to enter the volcanic rim of Mount Fuji and splits the fucker in half, killing it. While Jake and Amara survive by transferring to Scrapper, Newt, angered by the mega kaiju's failure, tries to flee, however, is also then sucker punched by Nate. And in custody of the PPDC, Newt threatens that the precursors will keep sending attacks, but Jake replies that humanity will soon be the one attacking the precursors, hopefully leading into at least some form of one more sequel. Because you can't just end this series on that kind of a cliffhanger. And if you do, you're an asshole. So how about this plot? It's good, but there's lots of missed potential. It does work as a sequel, and continuity-wise, it's fantastic. If you watch Pacific Rim and then you lead right into Pacific Rim 2, the two feel almost like a two-parter, at least in my opinion. The continuity is that strong. I'm going to get into that a little later, but I do like the continuity used with this film, or the good sense of continuity. Hang on. Anyway, I also do like that we got some returning cast members. That again really okay. I'll save the continuity for a little later. But overall, there are some aspects of this movie that do feel pretty disappointing. It has nothing to do with the story, but I just will say that overall, I saw one person call Pacific Rim Uprising the worst movie of 2018. To which I have to ask, what the fuck is wrong with some people? This movie has its problems, yes, but I really don't think this movie is that bad. Then again, I also like Venom. I actually love Venom. So I really don't care what people think. I don't think this movie is that bad. It has its problems, but as I will get to with the pros and cons, I think there's a lot of things about this movie that people overlook. So, with all that being said, let's get into the pros of the first Pacific Rim, shall we? Pro number one, the film has a pretty good cast. We, of course, have Charlie Hunnam as Raleigh Beckett. Now, I knew of Charlie Hunnam through this film. This is the one that introduced me into playing, or not playing. This is the guy that introduced me into the actor that is Charlie Hunnam. Of course, after this, I then got into what's it called? Sons of Anarchy, which again, I think that's his greatest performance ever. Though I've only seen him in, I think, only two things. So what the hell is he also in? Excuse me. Oh yeah, he was also in King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, which I also have seen and I also own. But yeah, the only three things I've seen him in is Sons of Anarchy, Pacific Rim, and actually, let me look here. Here's his filmography. Yeah, Pacific Rim. Oh, he was in Crimson Peak. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, and Sons of Anarchy. Those are the only three things I've seen him in. Of his three, I still say that Sons of Anarchy is his best work. Sons of Anarchy is a fucking spectacular show. But Charlie Hunnam is really, really, really good in this film. It's definitely better than what's it called? King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. That movie is not that good. I was actually one of those people who was hoping that would be a fun movie, and it just wasn't. But Charlie Hunnam, I feel, really, really does give it his all with this performance. It's very obvious that after piloting Gypsy Danger to defeat Knifehead, if you take one look at him, it's obvious that Raleigh has horrendous PTSD. You just his demeanor, the way that he walks around, the way he talks and looks at people. It's very obvious he's very jaded, and he has massive cases of PTSD because of him witnessing the death of his brother, which I would too. Let's be honest, anybody would. They were very close to their brother or sister, and they saw them die at the hands of a giant monster. They'd be pretty fucked up in the head. So for the first half of the movie, Raleigh is very, very subdued. It's like he has almost no faith in humanity whatsoever, or he has no faith in anything that humanity will do. But in the second half of the movie, when he meets Raleigh, he kind of comes, or not Raleigh, when he meets Mako, he kind of comes out of his shell and he finds companionship in another person finally. So then he starts, and also when he reunites with Pentecost in the second half of the movie, he almost kind of acts like the unofficial second or third in command because he's one of the most experienced people when fighting kaiju at the Shatter Dome at the time. So overall, I really do feel that Charlie Hunnam does an absolutely fantastic job in this film as Raleigh. His performance is great. His dialogue is great. His acting is great. The few fight scenes that he has hand to hand with humans are also very well done. And yeah, like Justin just said, this film deals with the theme of loss. Raleigh and Mako both witness their family members die. Pentecost has a deadly illness, and Herc loses his son Chuck at the end of the film. So the theme of loss, it's not shoved down your throat. It's treated as it kind of is treated like a war movie almost, where it's stated this is well, it's not really stated, but it kind of feels like this is something that you have to deal with war, and with this kind of war, it's worse than a human war because these enemies are just so hard to contend with, and it's so easy to lose people. That the theme of loss here, I really do think is really, really, really well done. And overall, Charlie Hunnam does a fantastic, fantastic job with Raleigh. Idris Elba as Marshal Stacker Pentecost. Now, I am actually kind of one of those people who was very skeptical of Idris Elba playing this character. But now that I've seen the movie, I feel like he is also very, very similar to Raleigh, as he has some form of, like, he doesn't really have PTSD, but he's very war weary, kind of like Rambo in Rambo 3, or even the fourth film too. Idris Elba has a fantastic voice for the role, and he has a great presence when he's on screen. He just kind of stands there, and he's always given the 1,000-yard stare to everybody. He doesn't raise his voice very often, but when he does, you better shut the fuck up and just listen to what he has to say. And also when he gives you a stern glare, you better watch the fuck out. Like during one quick scene, Raleigh like grabs him by the arm and he like, 1, don't you ever touch me again. 2, don't you ever touch me again. And when he just comes off as like a super stern, war-weary general, which he pretty much is. But Idris Elba also does a really good job of showing Pentecost's softer side, most notably when he rescues fuck, I keep getting distracted. Showing his softer side when he rescues Mako from the Category 2 kaiju. I don't think they give a name for that monster, but whatever. Adopting her as his daughter and raising her to be the best woman that she could be in the times at hand. So Idris Elba does an absolutely fantastic job. He also goes out like a badass at the end of the movie. So Oni Baba, I guess that's what it's called. But Idris Elba does a fantastic, fantastic job as Pentecost. You could not have picked a better actor to portray the role. And I also respect that to prepare for the role, Idris Elba watched footage of politicians David Cameron and Barack Obama, as well as Russell Crowe in Gladiator and Mel Gibson in Braveheart, to prepare himself for the type of character that he would be portraying. And I think that's awesome. I think that's absolutely awesome, awesome, awesome. Just goes to show that Idris Elba is kind of a, well, not really an underrated actor, but he is a truly fantastic actor. And if he does get the role as the new James Bond, I could be down for that. Then we have Rinko Kikuchi, I think that's how you pronounce her name, as Mako Mori. Of like the three, okay. Here's the thing with Rinko Kikuchi, or as Mako. She does do a great job. But when I got into this movie at first, because I knew that this movie took inspiration from the mecha anime genres, I was afraid that she would be the typical anime love interest type character. But Del Toro has stated, I was very careful how I built the movie. One of the other things I decided was that I wanted a female lead who was the equal force to the male leads. Now, this is something that's very common in anime tropes, but he also states she's not going to be a sex kitten. She's not going to come out in cut-off shorts and a tank top, and it's going to be a real, earnestly drawn character. And in my opinion, Rinko Kikuchi was the perfect choice for this character. She doesn't come off as he doesn't come off as an anime sex girl. She did, or did I say he? Excuse me. She just doesn't come off like the typical anime girl. She's very down to earth. She's very, it's kind of hard to describe her character. Obviously, she has another form of PTSD. Like, she is fucked up in the brain because of her experiences as a child, but she's trying so hard to get past her trauma from a child and make something out of herself, and also defeat the threat that threatens her entire planet. So Rinko Kikuchi does an absolutely phenomenal job as Mako. It's just kind of a shame what happens to her in the second film. I'll get to that later. And yes, Mako's hairstyle in this film does look somewhat similar to the character Namikawa in Godzilla, Invasion of the Astro Monster. And also I like that one of the biggest things I like about this movie is that Raleigh and Mako's relationship doesn't really go like romantic. It's kind of inferred that it does, but it's never outright stated. They're just like really, they're really comfortable with each other, and they find strength and motivation in each other. So they make a very good pail for piloting a giant robot. And they don't embrace each other, at least in my opinion. I feel they don't embrace each other out of love at the end of the film. They just embrace each other out of, they're happy that each other is alive, and they're finally happy that something that has been going on for 12 years that has taken so much toll on the planet and humanity is finally over. So they're just happy to be, and they're also happy to be with each other at the end of this big giant crisis. So I'm glad that their relationship doesn't really go romantic. Again, I feel it's somewhat inferred, but it's never outright stated. Like, they don't kiss. Thank God. And overall, the rest of the cast is pretty decent too. Charlie Day does a good job as Dr. Newt. He's clearly just like a kaiju nerd, but he also is very proactive in the. He's funny too, but he's does a really good job as the character is trying to be proactive in defeating the monsters. We have Bern Gorman as Dr. Herman Gottlieb. Also, hang on. Del Toro describes Gottlieb as a tweed-wearing English phlegmatic introvert that never leaves the lab, and that is exactly how this character is. Um, and Bern Gorman does an absolutely phenomenal job as the character. It's clear that Gottlieb has some kind of physical disability, in which I don't know really what it is. It might be cerebral palsy, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this character has like Asperger's or some kind of like super intellect, borderline autism thing. It's never really stated, or actually, no, it's not stated at all. I don't think Guillermo del Toro has ever stated that there's something wrong with him, but it's not shoved down your throat, and it's barely even noticeable. But Bern Gorman does an absolutely phenomenal job as Herman Gottlieb. He's watching him and Newt bicker like you have two radically different sides of how the kaiju's operate. You have Gottlieb, who is pretty much all Gottlieb, who is all logic, whereas Newt is sort of more all emotion. And watching these two clash, it's funny as fuck. But when they finally put aside their differences and decide to combine their intellect and work together, they just start clicking like clockwork. And it's kind of like a new version of either Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy or even Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But I don't even know why the hell I ever said that. And of course, Ron Perlman as Hannibal Chow. Not enough of Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman is in my opinion, one of the most underrated actors of all time. So there's not enough of him in this movie. And when he's on screen, he just eats up the scenery and he steals the show. And the rest of the hang on. Okay. The rest of the cast is overall pretty good. And they all do a good job. They're all well written, well acted, and they serve their purpose in the plot. So this movie has a really good cast. Hang on one second. Yep, that's what he is too. A kaiju groupie. So pro number 2, the movie's music score is really fucking awesome. Does Hannibal Chow kind of look like a pimp? Porn star, no. Pimp, yeah, kind of. But the movie's music score is awesome. Should have won an Oscar for Best Original Score. Music that plays when this is my favorite track, but overall the movie has a very, very good original soundtrack. It's rousing, it's brass, it fits the scene. It's how I describe the music done in a lot of Godzilla movies. It feels like it was made to fit what's going on screen. Like the music composers watched the movie and played the music to match what was happening on screen. But my favorite track in the whole film is the one that plays when Gypsy Danger was dragging along that giant ship and uses it as a baseball bat to beat the ever-living shit out of Otachi. God damn, I love that track. I listen to that track any day. Yes, I know what Hannibal is. He is a black market kaiju part dealer. Not a bad way to make a living. I don't know if that's an homage to War of the Gargantuas. I really don't. Sorry. But I love the music that is made for this movie. Again, it should have won an Oscar for Best Original Soundtrack. So not much to say about it, but let's see, who did the music for this movie? Ramin Djawadi, I think that's his name is. Who did the music for Slender Man, which is actually the only good thing that I can say about the Slender Man movie. We also did the music for Warcraft, which I have not seen, Clash of the Titans, and also Iron Man. I could be down for that. Anyway, so yeah, this guy should have won an Oscar for Best Original Soundtrack. This movie has a fantastic music score. Pro number 3 is the story. Again, I'm not going to talk about this one too much. The story for Pacific Rim is very, very, very original. It's very well thought out. And the only thing that I could really compare it to, honestly, is the story for the Godzilla anime trilogy. I haven't seen those movies, but I do know quite a bit about the story, and it's very original. It's very well done. And I think an anime series that would like expand on the story for this is an absolutely phenomenal idea because there's a lot here that can be explored. And it has lots of potential for it to be kind of like a big extended universe, kind of like the Alien series, or I'm not gonna say the Star Wars series. I don't think anything can ever top that, except maybe Star Trek and Warhammer 401k. But the Pacific Rim story has the potential to become a big film franchise, but also a lot of comic books. There's a lot of mainly comic books. There's books that could be made, an anime show or shows, spin-off movies. You can make this into a really big franchise to make a lot of money and basically kind of be like America's version of the Godzilla series. Though we'll still have the ever-expanding Godzilla series, hopefully, too. And maybe even a crossover with Pacific Rim and Godzilla in the future. I'm not one of those people who says, yes, that's coming because that hasn't been officially stated. But if that was to be a thing, or that too, yeah, America's version of Ultraman. If that was to be a thing, to have a Pacific Rim and Godzilla crossover, I would totally be down for that. I'm not going to hold my breath for it, though. Pro number 4 is the monsters for this movie. I think they're awesome. Kind of. The main monsters in this movie, I think, are pretty cool. Knifehead, who I'm not sure if it's been officially stated, but Knifehead does kind of bear a resemblance to the Gamera monster Guiron. Which, again, I don't know if that's official. Or yeah, Knifehead kind of looks like a hybrid version of Guiron and Zigra. I don't know if that's officially been stated by Guillermo del Toro, but I really do feel like Knifehead is a big amalgamation of Guiron and Zigra. Obviously, because the passing resemblance, Guiron has a giant knife on his head, and Knifehead is actually called Knifehead, and he actually uses his head as a knife. But I'll get to that a little later. And actually, Justin's doing my job for me. But the monsters here are awesome. They're not really overly extravagant like Ultraman or Toho monsters. They kind of just feel more animalistic and more, even though they're technically kind of aliens or mutants. They're kind of basic, and they're very down to earth. That's what I was looking for. They don't really have much ranged attacks. A lot of them are just mainly melee fighters, which again I don't have an issue with. Some of them have like specialized ranged attacks, like Leatherback has his EMP blast. Otachi is able to spew acid out of his mouth, but that's really about it. A lot of these monsters, they're just mainly pure melee fighters. I have no problem with that. Allows the Jaegers to really get in close with their hand-to-hand combat skills, which I love. But overall, the monsters are, in my opinion, they're total badasses. My favorite is probably Leatherback because I really like his design. Knifehead is also a pretty good one too. Though I do have one problem with the kaiju, which I'll get into when I get to the cons. Pro number 5 is Gypsy Danger. I love Gypsy Danger's design as a giant robot. I love his patriotic name, as Justin said a little while back. Let's see, what does he say? Shit, I can't find it. Well, the humans give the monsters like really or not monsters. They're the Jaegers really patriotic names, like Striker Eureka, Cherno Alpha, and of course Gypsy Danger. All of these super patriotic names. And in my opinion, Gypsy Danger is the best Jaeger that this movie has. Striker Eureka is also pretty cool, but still my favorite is Gypsy Danger. I love his design. He seems like he's the most humanoid and just practically created Jaeger for killing kaiju. And there's also Striker Eureka, which is the second most practical, but I still say that is Gypsy Danger. Love his design. I do feel like or no, I don't feel like. I see the influences of Mazinger Z with Gypsy Danger, and I do feel like that Gypsy Danger is a big giant homage to Mazinger Z. Humans are loaded into Gypsy Danger's head, and it's very similarly placed onto the body of Gypsy Danger, similar to how Koji Kabuto would say Majin Go and Pileder on, attaching his Pileder craft to Mazinger Z's head, activating the robot. Gypsy Danger has what's called an elbow rocket, which is a rocket propeller in his elbow, and that added more power to his punches. Gypsy Danger has an atomic fire generator in his chest that could easily be the breast fire from Mazinger Z, and the elbow rocket is clearly the rocket punch from Mazinger Z. There's also the Gypsy Danger's blades, which I do feel like could be Mazinger blades from Great Mazinger. And there's also the plasma cannon, but I think that's just kind of its own thing. But I really do feel like Gypsy Danger is a big giant homage to Mazinger Z, and I love him for it. I love his color scheme too. It's a deep sapphire metallic blue, which contrasts with the orange of his eyes and the orange of his chest, and the bright blue of the plasma cannon. That looks really cool. Overall, Gypsy Danger is a fucking badass giant robot. And if Gypsy Danger was to ever be recreated and given its own AI system, I would definitely love to see that in like another super robot series. Good job, guys. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pro number 6 is all the monster homages. I really do feel like a lot of the monsters in this movie are big giant homages to various other monsters. As Justin Tang listed here, Knifehead is an amalgamation of Guiron and Zigra. Onibaba is very similar to Ganymede from Space Amoeba, and yes, I do agree. It's very arthropod / lobster crab-esque in design. Otachi is kind of an amalgamation of Anguirus, Rodan, Baragon, and Varan. I don't really agree with Anguirus, but I definitely do see the Rodan, Baragon, and Varan elements, especially from Rodan and Varan, since they both fly and they're very pterodactylian, but also very lizard-like in appearance. Leatherback is kind of a big amalgamation of King Kong. Yes, essentially Leatherback I consider to be if King Kong was a lizard. But Kong, Orga, and Dagarla from Rebirth of Mothra 2. And Raiju is kind of somewhat inspired by the Ultraman monster Gabora because of its armor-plated folding back head, kind of like a graboid. So I like all the different amalgamations of different designs that are not really like stolen from other monsters, but they're inspired by other monsters to create their own thing. None of these monsters look in no way like ripoffs of other monsters. They're very original in their own right. I love their designs and their color scheme. They have a lot of fluorescent light all over the place, which that's one thing I love about both of these Pacific Rim movies. This movie is a big fan of neon and fluorescent lighting, especially in the second movie. Like the inside of the monsters' mouths, it glows bright blue or bright orange in the dark. Their eyes glow. Their body kind of glows. Their blood glows. In fact, it creates something called kaiju blue, which their blood is pretty much like an oil slick or almost a radiation slick in water. So I love that. Overall, I love all the monster homages in all this movie's kaiju. Definitely goes to show that Guillermo del Toro was a giant fan of monster movies. Let's see. Pro number 7 is the monster battles. If there's lots of snippets throughout the movie, but there's Gypsy Danger versus Knifehead. There's the fight in Hong Kong between Otachi and Leatherback, so that's kind of a big fight. But there's Cherno Alpha tries to fight Otachi. Striker Eureka also tries to fight Leatherback, or not Striker Eureka. Crimson Typhoon tries to fight Leatherback, but gets the fuck beaten out of him. Striker Eureka also tries, but gets disabled by Leatherback. Then Gypsy Danger fights Leatherback, and then goes on to fight Otachi. Then Striker Eureka and Gypsy Danger are repaired, and they fight Scunner, Raiju, and the last 3 kaijus. That's another fight. The monster fights are very, very, very fun. Jaeger versus monster fights, they're very fun. There's a lot of martial arts that are kind of tried to be well, not kind of tried. They are implemented, but it's really practical stuff. Like there's boxing, there's a little bit of kickboxing, there's some Muay Thai, there's some karate, there's also a little bit of judo. So I like the martial arts elements that are included in the robots fighting style, since it is essentially humans versus monsters. It's somewhat similar to Ultraman too, since they actually do use actual martial arts to take down yeah, it is kind of odd that Japan doesn't have a Jaeger. But whatever, it's fine. So anyway, yeah, Ultraman actually do use martial arts to take down monsters, and that's something I feel it's taken from Ultraman and add into the Jaegers. So they use martial arts to take down the monsters, and it's awesome. Oh, they just use a lot of boxing from what I can like. Boxing is the main martial art that's used to take down the monsters, with maybe some kickboxing and Muay Thai, because they do add a couple knees and elbows into their fighting styles. But a lot of it is boxing, and I love it. Whenever a monster gets punched, like they clearly do recoil from the impact because the punches are so strong, and especially when Gypsy Danger uses its elbow rocket, Leatherback's skull is almost caved in when he gets that punch. And the monsters also fight very brutally. It's very animalistic. It also kind of feels like they're a little intelligent, but they're also like sadistically brutal when taking down the Jaegers. So the monster fight scenes are very, very entertaining. They're very well done. They're well choreographed. And this leads me into the last pro that I have, which is pro number 8. Oh, yeah, there's that too. Leatherback makes a brief derp face when he gets smashed with shipping containers. The last pro that I have is the special effects. The special effects are fucking great. There's a lot of CG used in this movie. I do say that I do agree. Yes, there was a lot of CG. Would have been really cool to see them as suit versus suit action with CG enhancements, but the CG that is used looks amazing, especially for 2013. This movie's budget of $190 million was definitely very well spent. I'm almost certain that they used motion capture for all the monsters and Jaegers. The fact that they didn't, I would say they're kind of stupid. So actually, let me look real quick. Here we go. I don't know. Well, there is some practical effects that are used, mainly for building the suits, helmets, and con pods when the humans are piloting the mechs. But I really do feel that there was a lot there was motion capture used. Excuse me. And what fantastic motion capture um the motion capture used here is fucking phenomenal. It's on par with stuff that Peter Jackson was doing in King Kong 5 and the Lord of the Rings stuff with Gollum, and also with not Pacific Rim, with Rampage, which ironically is another movie that used motion capture. But the special effects are fucking amazing. There's a lot of CG, but it looks really good. All the monsters are well designed. They look like organic creatures. You see their muscles shake and their limbs shake when they move around. When they're impacted by punches and attacks, they actually recoil and they look like they're in true pain. Their blood splatters all over the place. The robots are also very well detailed. They look like they're actual giant robots. They look like they're made out of titanium or metal or whatever. Overall, the special effects in this movie are absolutely fucking phenomenal. And it should have won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. But again, the Oscars are snobs and they don't give a shit about they don't give a shit about monster movies. They only care about dramas or crime dramas or still dramas. But whatever. Should have won a lot of awards, but the special effects in this film are utterly phenomenal. The motion capture is great. The CG looks great. The green screen and composite shots all look fantastic. The miniature effects that they use for the cockpits of the Jaegers, they had CG enhancements, but they still look really good. Those look fantastic. Overall, this movie also does have amazing cinematography. And yeah, you do buy that the Jaegers are as large as they are, and when they move, shit does go down, as Justin says. Overall, the effects in this film are utterly amazing. And definitely used its $190 million budget very, very, very well. So with all the good things that I can say about the first Pacific Rim, are there any cons to this movie? I have one. I have one con, and I gotta say, I feel like the final battle is a little anticlimactic. The Category 5 kaiju that is used in this movie, I can't remember the name of the Category 5 kaiju that's used. But I would say he probably has maybe 3 minutes of screen time. So he literally does feel like a last-minute addition. Slattern, that's his name. I feel like Slattern is a little forced, but I figured we have to have a Category 5 kaiju, but Slattern, I feel, is a very boring monster. I'm not crazy about his design. He literally just feels like he's thrown in the movie at the last minute. And also, Striker Eureka and Gypsy Danger, I feel like they get their asses kicked a little too quickly and a little too easily. Though, granted, Gypsy Danger does end up giving us probably debatably the best kill in the movie when he literally slices. What's the name of that monster? He slices Raiju clean in half with his sword. It's probably the best kill in the movie. But I do feel like the two Jaegers, they get their asses kicked a little too easily in this film. And it's a little disappointing. And I do feel like the final fight against the three kaiju, it's a little anticlimactic and it's a little poorly executed. But with all that said, Pacific Rim is a fucking phenomenal movie. If you are a diehard kaiju fan and you have not seen Pacific Rim, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. Pacific Rim, no, I wasn't really upset at Pentecost's death. I knew that when I saw his nose bleed and when it was revealed, yeah, he's dying of radiation sickness, I knew he was going to sacrifice himself. And I figured he literally goes out with a bang, but he goes out like a badass, so I'm okay with that. But Pacific Rim is a phenomenal movie. I would say it's one of my favorite kaiju films. It just barely makes the cut along with Rampage. So I would definitely say it's an honorable mention of mine. But if you are a diehard kaiju fan and you have not seen Pacific Rim, you're doing yourself a big disservice by not seeing this. It's a loving homage to the kaiju, mecha, and anime genre. If you're a big monster movie fan, you'll love this movie. If you're a big anime fan, you'll love this movie. If you're a big Guillermo del Toro fan, you'll love this movie. If you're a big giant robot fan, you'll love this movie. If you're one of the truly lucky people and you love all those categories, you will adore this movie, as I do. Pacific Rim is a fantastic film. But despite its one problem, I will be giving this movie a very solid 9 out of 10. It's a fantastic movie. There's lots to like with this film, and if you don't, something's wrong with you. So now let's move on to the pros and cons of Pacific Rim 2, shall we? This should be interesting. Pacific Rim Uprising. Pro number 1 is the characters are decent. I do like that we have hang on, I gotta get Pacific Rim 2 up again. Let's see. We have Bern Gorman and Charlie Day returning as Herman Gottlieb and Newton Geiser, respectively. Again, that kind of leads into the continuity of the film, but I'll get to that later. But I like that we have these two returning. I actually feel like Bern Gorman gives a better performance in this movie than a slightly better performance as Gottlieb in this movie than he did in the first film. Don't get me wrong. He's great in the first film, but I feel like he's a little better in this movie because he's kind of taken on a Newt personality with his new outlook on the monsters and new outlook on oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. God damn it. His performance is a little bit better here. He has a new outlook on the monsters from the first film, and he takes on a Newt personality where he's not afraid to get his hands dirty now. In the first movie, Newt was the one who was really hands-on with kaiju parts and studying the biology of monsters, whereas Herman was very clean. He worked with numbers. Now he's both. He works with numbers, and he tries to be very clean, but he's now not afraid to get his hands dirty and work with kaiju biology parts, aka nasty, slimy, grossy stuff. So I like Herman Gottlieb a little better in this movie than he was in the first film. But we have John Boyega as Jake Pentecost. I know him best as Finn in the new Star Wars sequel trilogy. And when I heard John Boyega was going to be in this movie, I was a little surprised, but I was also very I was pretty excited because I love John Boyega as Finn, and specifically Force Awakens. He's kind of just a bitch in Last Jedi. That's because Last Jedi is a crime against humanity. But John Boyega is as far as the characters go, he's the highlight of the film. He's very well acted. It's clear he has another form of PTSD or like survivor's guilt with this film. Or with his character in this film. He does a really good job with the character. He's also a fun protagonist to get attached to. Scott Eastwood as Nathan Lambert he's okay. It's nice to see him and John Boyega's character kind of put aside the differences by the end of the movie. But overall, Scott Eastwood, he's good, but I wouldn't say he's amazing in this movie. Kaylee Spaney as Amara Namani does a really good job. She's not really all that annoying. She's a little annoying in the beginning of the movie, but toward the end, in the second and third acts, she really steps up her game, and her acting is very, very, very well done. And she becomes a pretty decent character and a good like opposite to John Boyega, and they're kind of an example of the phrase "opposites attract," where The two are kind of so different in their mindsets, but that's what makes them so compatible to be Jaeger pilots. Let's see. And the rest of the cast is just kind of okay. They're pretty generic. They're only there just to either be cannon fodder or just to fill out a role at the convenience of the script being written. So not quite as good a cast as the first film, but they're still serviceable for what they are. Pro number 2 is I feel this movie is paced pretty well. It's not overly slow. I actually feel like this movie does move at a very quick pace, which some may see as kind of a flaw, which in a couple ways it is, because it leads this movie, well, it leads to a big con that I have with this movie. It also kind of feels like this makes this movie feel like it's just an extended TV episode. A really fast-paced extended TV episode. But I don't mind this movie's quick pace. It just means that there's no slow parts, and everything leads into the other at a very quick pace. So you're never bored watching the film, at least in my opinion. Now, pro number 3 is the continuity. Now, I've talked about this movie, or I've talked about this pro already, but I love this film's sense of continuity. The returning actors also does help with the film's continuity, specifically Gottlieb, Charlie Day. We have what's her name? Rinko Kikuchi returning as Mako. And let's see. Actually, yeah, that's all the returning actors from the first film. So having these returning characters reprise their roles with the same actors, I really do feel makes the continuity feel that much more solid. And if you just look at the world as a whole, as it's recovered from the kaiju attack 10 years prior, it does feel natural, and it does feel very genuine, and it feels like, yeah, this is how the world would be 10 years after the kaiju attack. It feels very genuine, and it feels very well thought out, and it just feels great. The sense of continuity here, I think, is very, very, very well executed. Doesn't really feel like, well, it feels like 10 years have passed, but it feels like everybody was on their A game when they were thinking out the story for this, and it feels like a natural progression for the film's universe. So I love that about this movie. Pro number 4 is that this movie is very, very, very colorful. They had a different studio put this movie out. Yeah, that's true. The first opening scene counts as stock footage. But, well, I kind of feel like that was stock footage used in the proper way, kind of like the Rocky movies or the Karate Kid movies. It's just a brief recap of the previous installment just to get everybody up to speed. Though with the Rocky, well, no, I'm not going to say that. So yeah, it feels like it was necessary in the Rocky movies and the Karate Kid movies. Well, that also makes sense because Rocky and Karate Kid, at least the first, well, those franchises were directed by the same guy at first, John G. Avildsen. May he rest in peace. But this movie had a different studio putting the movie out. The first Pacific Rim was put out by Warner Brothers. The Pacific Rim 2 was put out by Universal. Well, Warner Brothers, I think, still had some hand in putting the film out, but Universal had their hand in this film as well, and I feel this movie has a bit more of a Universal feel. Gone is the doom, gloomy feel of the first Pacific Rim, which that works for that film, but if that was here, I don't think it would have worked. Excuse me. Now we have a much more brighter and light color tone to this movie, and I think that fits very well with this film's tone. It's not quite as dark as the first film. I don't mean that like literally. I mean that as like in tone. This movie is not quite as dark as the first film. It's not as doomy and doomsday as the first film. Just kind of feels like a extended, not really extended, like extended time return attack 10 years later, which that's exactly what this film is, if that makes any sense. And it's not as dark also because the humans were completely caught off guard with the first kaiju attack. With this movie, it kind of feels more patriotic and it kind of gives it a more sense of hurrah because the humans were preparing for a potential future kaiju attack. So then now they just kind of feel like they're more like we know exactly what the fuck we're doing. And as Justin just says, has a sort of comic book tokusatsu show feel to the to the film. That's exactly how I would describe this movie, which is fantastic. It's different from the first movie, and it's not just copying the first movie. So this movie, you definitely can't say this movie suffers from sequelitis, and if you do, you're an idiot. So that's really cool, and I love this movie's colors. There's lots of neon, holographic blues and greens and oranges. It's kind of blend together very well. It's very pretty to look at. I'd love to see this movie on Blu-ray. Specifically, there's a lot of neon blues and lots of neon oranges. I think those colors go together very, very, very well. So, and I love that. I love how colorful this movie is. Pro number 4 is the Kaiju Jaeger hybrid idea. I think that is a fantastic, fantastic concept. It's unfortunate that it's really not given that much weight, but if you were to, I think the idea of using that as like the grunts for future kaiju attacks, or maybe like a specialized kaiju attack to fight against the humans from the precursors, I think using kaiju Jaeger hybrids is a fantastic concept. It's done well here. I love the designs. They clearly look like kaiju Jaeger hybrids. They're essentially cyborgs. Though again, they're not really on screen that much, and the idea is not given that much progression and weight. Well, it's given weight, but not entirely as much. I can't fucking talk. There is some missed potential with the idea in this film, but the Kaiju Jaeger hybrids is fucking awesome. And yes, I do feel that's a little similar to the robots from Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'm not a big fan of that show, no. But I do feel it may be coincidentally similar, but it's similar nonetheless. It's also kind of similar to Kuryu as well. From Godzilla X Mechagodzilla. But I love the Kaiju Jaeger hybrid idea. I'd love to see that be implemented in future Pacific Rim installments. So I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. And they could also be used as a weapon for the humans to use to kind of fight fire with fire, while also it's a hybrid style of the fight fire with fire mentality, and also fighting with a hybrid of the new ways mixed with the old ways. So it's kind of a 3-way hybrid style idea of fighting, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry I'm all over the place with reviewing these movies. I'm a little rusty at this, if you can't tell, but also there's just a lot to say about these movies. But overall, I love the Kaiju Jaeger hybrid concept. I would love to see that be implemented in further Pacific Rim installments. I think it's a fantastic concept. Pro number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 is the action scenes in this movie are pretty damn entertaining. I'd say they're about as good as the first film, though there's not quite nearly as much. And one problem that I had, well, no, I'm going to say that later, but the action scenes in this movie are also very fun. I think my favorite fight scene is probably Gypsy Avenger versus Obsidian Fury. Probably the best fight scene in the film, because there's actual like 2 humanoid robots going against each other. So it's like 2 giants fighting. And it's awesome. It's very entertaining. It's very well done special effects wise. I'll get to that in a minute. But it's very fun. The final fight with all four Jaegers against the three kaijus. It's very well done. It's very well edited. It's very entertaining. It's very well choreographed. It's very exciting. It's very entertaining. I love it. And the final action scene with Gypsy Avenger versus the Mega Kaiju is somewhat entertaining. I'll get to my issue with it later, but it's a fun scene. And also the way that Gypsy Avenger kills a Mega Kaiju is is A, it's brutal, but also B, it's a spectacle to watch. So that is awesome. So overall, the action scenes in this movie are very, very entertaining. And the last pro that I have for Pacific Rim 2 is the special effects are absolutely phenomenal. I'd actually say they're a little better than the first movie. Let's see. This movie had an even bigger budget, I believe. No, it had a smaller budget. Never mind. Had a budget of $150 million. But despite that, I'd say the CG and the composite shots and the green screen stuff, they look a little bit better than the first movie. They're not quite as elaborate as the first film, so I actually think that's where the smaller budget kind of shows. But the CG work still is very well done. One thing that this movie, I think, does better than the first movie is that a lot of the action takes place during the day, whereas a lot of the action took place in the first film at night. That could kind of hide some of the flaws with the CG effects. Here it's in broad daylight, and that's why I think the CG looks a lot better, or not a lot better, but it looks a little better than the first film. The CG is very well detailed. All the monsters are very well detailed. The robots are very well detailed. They're very well constructed. The monsters are well constructed. The green screen looks great. The CG is well done. The blue screen stuff looks great. The composite shots are great. The sets are well done too. Like for the PPDC headquarters and such. The internal pilots of the Jaegers, those all look great. The suits look fantastic because the Jaeger pilots wear actual suits, kind of like the Iron Man suits. And actually, the guy who Gypsy Danger and Obsidian Fury fight versus Titans fighting. I'm guessing you mean the Attack on Titans movie. Definitely Gypsy Danger and Obsidian Fury is a better fight. It's not quite as short, though it's still short. I'll get to that later. But overall, I think the special effects in this movie are a little bit better than the first film. Hate me all you want. I don't care. The special effects here are utterly fantastic. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the cons with Pacific Rim 2. Con number one, killing off Mako. I feel like it's a giant spit in the face for fans of the character in the first film, but I also feel like killing off Mako just kind of shits all over the character development that she had with Raleigh in the first film, and just kind of feels like the studio just didn't want to have that character around very much and just flushed it all down the toilet. So I feel like killing off Mako is a big mistake for this film. Con number two is that Raleigh doesn't return. I don't exactly know why Charlie Hunnam didn't return for Pacific Rim 2. Might have been because he was working with King Arthur at the time, or he maybe just didn't want to return because he didn't feel like there needed to be a sequel. I don't know the reason why he didn't return, but I feel like if he returned, like he could have been a good ally to Jake. I don't really think that's a gripe, but whatever. I think Charlie would have been a good partner to Jake in this film. But it's a shame that Raleigh doesn't return. At least he's acknowledged. I will give the film that. It acknowledges that Raleigh is maybe still alive. I'm pretty sure he still is. But still, it's a shame that he didn't return to play Raleigh in this film. Con number three is I feel like the kaiju used in this movie are pretty boring. I don't even remember their names. I actually don't think they are given names. But the only kaiju that I think is really cool is the Mega Kaiju. Actually, no, are they given names? I can't remember. No, they're not. But the Mega Kaiju, I think, is the only monster in this movie that is really interesting. Okay, they are given names: Raijin, Hakuja, and Shrike-Thorn. I think these three monsters on their own, they're just kind of boring. They have interesting designs, I will give them that. But the monsters just kind of boring. They're there just to be used as big guns, and that's literally it. Though again, when they become the Mega Kaiju, that's when I think the monsters become interesting because A, that has a really cool design, but also B, how fucking big the thing is. I think that would be considered a category 10. Because when it's scaling Mount Fuji, it looks like it's maybe a sixth the size of the entire volcano. So that thing is fucking huge. But overall, I don't really think the monsters in this movie are that interesting. They don't have that much screen time as well. So that's also disappointing. They don't really feel like actual glooming threats in the film either, like they were in the first movie. Again, they just kind of feel like big guns, and that's it. So there's that. Con number 4 is that this movie is way too short. The first movie was The first Pacific Rim is an hour and 32 minutes, so it's 2 hours and 12 minutes long. But Pacific Rim 2 is 111 minutes, so it's not even. It's an hour and 51 minutes long, and I think that's a big damn shame. I don't remember that. That was a really quick scene, I think, though. Anyway, I think this movie is way too short. If you're gonna make a sequel to something as potentially complex as Pacific Rim, its sequel needs to be much longer. And this movie doesn't really have that. This is another problem that I have with this film. It kind of doesn't feel, it feels rushed a little bit, despite the 5-year wait. It feels rushed in the sense that it kind of feels like an extended episode to a Pacific Rim TV series, which I would like to see. But ultimately, I feel like this movie is way too short. It should have been like a nearly 3-hour long movie because it should have really explored the effect that the kaiju had on the entire world and how the entire world was recovered. I still get that sense that the entire world has really tried to recover from the kaiju attack and has naturally progressed to become a almost PTSD traumatized entire planet, if that makes any sense. But I feel like this movie is just way too short, and it ultimately feels like a lot of aspect that the filmmakers in this movie, they're just being lazy. So I do think this movie should have been longer. Con number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is once again, I feel like the ending is a little anticlimactic, but this leads into the final issue that I have is that the action scenes are way too short. So con number 6, action scenes are way, way too short for my tastes. And the reason I say the ending is kind of anticlimactic is all the action scenes are so short. Obsidian Fury's attack when he kills Mako, that scene is entertaining, but it's too short. The actual fight with Gypsy Avenger versus Obsidian Fury, again, it's awesome, but it's way too short. It's also a little too one-sided. And the final fight with all 4 Jaegers against the 3 kaiju, again, it's entertaining. It's very entertaining. It's very well done, but it's, again, very, very short. And some of the Jaegers, they get their asses kicked way too easily. And when the Mega Kaiju shows up, all 3 of the 3 remaining Jaegers, they get almost seemingly brushed aside way too easily. Oh, don't get me started, Justin. But the Mega Kaiju seemingly just kind of shirks aside 3 of the 4 Jaegers with almost no effort, and Gypsy Avenger gets his ass kicked way too easily against the Mega Kaiju. So I really don't like how short the action scenes are in this movie. Again, they're entertaining and they're awesome, but the anticlimactic ending mixed with the fact, like, this is my biggest problem with this movie, is that the action scenes are way too short, and the final fight, it's anticlimactic, and it's also really one-sided. It's disappointingly one-sided. So that drives me nuts. But overall, that's really all I have to say about Pacific Rim 2. Not quite as much as I thought I would have to with the first film. So I asked 2 questions at the beginning of this movie. Was Pacific Rim 2 worth the? Did it live up to the hype? And was it worth the 5-year wait? The answer to both questions is no. It did not live up to the hype, and I don't think this movie was worth waiting 5 years to see as a sequel. Worth waiting 5 years to see a sequel. It does not live up as a sequel to Pacific Rim. At least not after 5 years. If this came out 2 years, I would have been fine. But 5 years, no, was not worth the wait, and it did not live up to the hype. But I still did enjoy this movie, and calling it the worst movie of 2018, I think, is one of the most retarded things I've ever heard in my entire life. Which is why I will be giving Pacific Rim Uprising a 7 out of 10. It's a fun film. It has a lot of good things going for it, and if you're a diehard Pacific Rim fan, of course you should check this movie out. But it does have a lot of problems, and there is a lot of missed potential here. But still, I don't think it's as bad as everyone else says it is. So with all that said, post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. Kind of apologize for me being all over the place with this review. As you can see, I'm kind of rusty after being away from this for 2 weeks. And once again, I do apologize for my long hiatus. Again, 106-degree fever, man. Fucked me up. And the next review that will be coming out is a review of the infamous The X from Outer Space. Oh, boy. So I hope you look forward to that. And as always, go out and if you're going to make a movie that has a giant robot fighting a giant mega kaiju, put in some effort, please. And I will see you guys in the next video.